The Postmaster General of the United States just sat in front of the Senate and admitted he had no idea thousands of pieces of mail were rotting in a pile on a St. Louis street. Tax documents, prescription drugs, bills, just dumped. And when Senator Hawley showed him the photo, live on camera, he said it was the first time he'd heard about it. This man runs 640,000 employees. He got a $35,000 bonus last year. And when Hawley asked him point blank, "Will you refuse that bonus until the mail gets delivered?" he laughed. That's what we're looking at today.
Good to see you. I want to show you a picture, if I could, just to start. This is North St. Louis, Missouri. This is April 29th of this year. This is right around North Taylor Avenue. This is a pile of mail. Thousands of pieces of mail. Tax documents, prescription drugs, bills, utility communications from companies, thousands and thousands of documents. As you might imagine, the residents of St. Louis, when this was discovered on April 29th, were absolutely outraged, not least because the mail has been slow and not delivered and missing targets for years now. And here we have thousands of pieces of mail. Some of the postmarks here, this wasn't going across the country. You have letters here that were just going across town that had been dumped in this pile. Now, the Postal Service promised the public and me, when this was discovered, that there'd be a full accounting of this. We would find out what happened, and we'd have a full and total investigation and complete transparency. And since that time, I've heard nothing. That was April. I've heard nothing. What's the answer?
My answer would be, when you put up that in front of me, I'm outraged.
What have you done about it?
And I think everybody in the Postal Service that bleeds postal blue would be outraged.
Well, but what have you done about it? That was months ago. What have you done since then?
Since this is the first time I've heard about it.
How is this possibly the first time you've heard about it since I've written to you? Members of the delegation have written to you. Listen, I get thousands of pieces of mail a week about the post office. People's mail not being delivered. Here it is in a pile. And you're telling me this is the first time you've heard about it?
It's the first time I've heard about it.
Don't you think that's kind of exceptional? What's going on in the management of the Postal Service?
Senator, because
you don't know?
I don't think I have heard about it.
What's going on in the management of the Postal Service that you've got a pile of thousands of pieces of mail in a major city, and this is the first time, you're the Postmaster General, you're telling me it's the first time you've heard about it. Who works for you? What's going on?
640,000 people.
Well, maybe you want to fire some of them. Do you think that this is doing the job?
I think that's outrageous.
You're missing your targets all over my state. Let's take a look at another picture. Your targets for on-time delivery in my state, which were not good to begin with, are just in the 90s, meaning that you could miss it 10% of the time and give yourself an A grade. But start looking there in 2024, 2025, you're hitting your on-time delivery targets 76% of the time, maybe. That means fully a quarter of the time, best case scenario, people's mail in my state is not being delivered to them on time. Is this acceptable?
It's absolutely not acceptable.
Well, why is it not changing?
It is changing. If you actually look at the numbers, you'll see the numbers have been increasing.
It is not changing. That's this year. That is April of this year. Just last year, the Inspector General, when I asked him to do an audit of the St. Louis Distribution Center, the Inspector General told me it was the worst case of lack of on-time delivery, the worst case of distribution problems he had ever seen, ever, in an audit that he had done. Ever. What's been changed since then?
If you look at the service scores, I would commend you to go online. We publish our service scores weekly.
No, I don't want to go online. I want you to come here with answers because you're the Postmaster General of the United States. I don't want to have you come here and be told you don't know what's going on in my home state. When I have written to you, when I have called you, when my residents have called you and asked you, when they're paying their taxes and they're paying these Postal Service marks and increases, I don't want to be told, go online. I want answers. And the other thing I want to know is, why are you getting bonuses and members of your staff getting bonuses for this kind of performance? Let's take a look. Just look at the numbers. The Postmaster Generals of this country in the last 10 years have gotten bonuses over $2 million. You got a bonus last year, $305,781. Why? Why are you getting bonuses when my constituents can't get the mail.
Senator, I don't control bonuses. Our Board of
Will
Governors
you pledge not to take them?
bonuses. Pardon me?
Will you pledge not to take them?
Will you pledge to reward our people?
Oh, no. Don't turn it around. You are in charge of the Postal Service, and we have given you everything you've asked for. Just 3 years ago, this Congress allotted tens of billions of dollars to the Postal Service. I'm glad you think it's funny, Postmaster General. You think that this situation is funny. Let the record reflect the Postmaster General is laughing as he gets asked why he's taking bonuses while there's piles of undelivered mail in my state. It's a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace.
Let the record reflect that I was laughing when you said we've been given everything we've asked for.
You have been given an opportunity to deliver the mail, and you're here laughing about it. You are here telling me you don't know, you're unprepared, and let the record reflect you won't pledge not to take bonuses. So you're going to keep on taking them? Is that what you're telling me? Yes or no? Will you refuse bonuses so long as the mail goes undelivered?
Any piece of mail?
Yes or no? Will you refuse bonuses until the mail gets delivered? Yes or no?
What mail?
Oh, this is extraordinary. In other words,
No, it
you
is
don't know.
extraordinary. I
You
agree
want
it's
the money.
extraordinary.
Unbelievable.
I agree it's
Unbelievable.
extraordinary.
Unbelievable. I am absolutely astounded at this today, General.
As am I.
Well, you should be. And frankly, if things don't get better, you ought to resign because you're not doing the job. You're leaving your good postal workers out there. You're hanging them out to dry. They don't make near what you do. They're working their butts off. They're getting blamed, and you're getting the bonus. We got a big problem.
Time has expired.
Based on what I've seen today, you're part of it.
Let me tell you what we actually watched in that hearing room, because if you walked away thinking this was just another angry senator yelling at a bureaucrat, you missed the real story. This was not a performance. What Senator Hawley did was a forensic dismantling of a man who runs one of the largest civilian workforces in the United States. Let's start with the photograph, because that image is the anchor of everything that followed. April 29th, North St. Louis. Thousands of pieces of mail sitting in a pile on the street. Tax documents, prescription drugs, utility bills, personal letters, not lost in transit, not delayed in a sorting facility, dumped. And when Hawley put that photograph in front of Postmaster General Louis DeJoy and asked what happened, DeJoy said something that should stop every person watching in their tracks. He said it was the first time he had heard about it. This is not a mid-level manager insulated from field operations. This is the Postmaster General of the United States, the man responsible for 640,000 employees and a delivery network that touches every single address in this country. Letters had been written to his office. Members of the congressional delegation had contacted him directly. The story had been public since April, and his answer, sitting under oath in front of the United States Senate, was that he had never heard about it. There are only two ways to interpret that, and neither of them is acceptable. Either he is lying under oath, which is a federal crime, or his organization is so structurally broken that a public scandal of this scale never reached the desk of the person nominally in charge of the entire operation. Both of those conclusions are disqualifying for someone in that position. The United States Postal Service has a governance structure that most people have never thought about, and understanding it is essential to understanding why this hearing matters. The Postmaster General is not a cabinet secretary. He does not report directly to the president. He is appointed by a board of governors, 9 members, each nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, serving 7-year terms. What this hearing showed is that the structure has produced the opposite effect. When accountability runs through a board rather than a direct chain of command, it becomes diffuse. Nobody owns the failure. DeJoy can say the board sets the bonuses. The board can say DeJoy runs the operations, and the mail sits in a pile on a sidewalk in North St. Louis while everyone points at the org chart. Now let's talk about the delivery numbers, because they tell a story that goes well beyond one incident. In Missouri, the Postal Service is hitting its on-time delivery targets roughly 76% of the time. That means 1 in 4 pieces of mail is not getting where it needs to go on schedule. And here is the part that should make you genuinely angry. These are targets the Postal Service set for itself. They are not external benchmarks. The agency decided that missing delivery 10% of the time still constitutes acceptable performance, gave itself an A on that standard, and then still cannot hit it. They built failure into the definition of success, and then failed to meet even that. The Inspector General, not a political opponent but the Postal Service's own internal watchdog, audited the St. Louis Distribution Center and concluded it was the single worst case of delivery failure he had seen in his entire career. That audit came out last year, after years of complaints from Missouri residents and elected officials, and when Hawley asked what had specifically changed since that audit, DeJoy's answer was, "Go look at our website." The correct answer is not a website link. The fact that DeJoy thought that was an acceptable response tells you exactly how insulated from consequence he has become. Which brings me to the moment that defined this entire hearing. Hawley asked DeJoy directly, "Will you pledge to refuse your bonus so long as the mail goes undelivered?" A yes or no question, nothing complicated. And DeJoy laughed. He later tried to explain that he was laughing at a different remark. Maybe that explanation is technically accurate, but here is what I need you to understand. It does not matter. Because when you are the head of a federal agency sitting in front of the United States Senate, being asked to account for mail rotting on a sidewalk and a 76% delivery rate, the correct response is not laughter. It is not deflection. It is not a website link. The correct response is accountability, and we got none of it. DeJoy said he does not control his own bonus, that the Board of Governors sets it, and technically that may be accurate under his compensation agreement. But here is what he did not say. He did not say he would ask the board to withhold it. He did not say he would refuse it if offered. When Hawley pressed him to make that pledge on the record, DeJoy responded by asking what mail specifically would need to be delivered before the condition would be satisfied. It signals that this is how it is done. You do not answer hard questions directly. You redirect. You cite the board. You make the standard so conditional that it can never be enforced. And meanwhile, the mail sits in a pile and the bonuses keep coming. And yet here we are, watching the Postmaster General learn about a St. Louis mail dump on live television. That does not happen in an institution where failure has real consequences for the people at the top. It happens in an institution where the people at the top have learned, correctly based on experience, that hearings generate headlines and not consequences. It is not Louis DeJoy. He keeps the bonus regardless of what happens in that hearing room. It is not the Board of Governors. They serve their 7-year terms and rotate out. The people who pay are the residents of North St. Louis who could not get their prescriptions. The small business owner whose tax documents were sitting in a pile on North Taylor Avenue when the filing deadline passed. These are not hypothetical harms. They are the documented, measurable consequences of institutional failure, and they land almost exclusively on the people who have no alternative to the system that is failing them. Hawley said near the end of that hearing that DeJoy is leaving his postal workers out to dry. They do the work. They take the blame, and the man at the top collects the bonus. The carriers and sorters and distribution workers are not responsible for what we saw in that hearing room. The failure lives at the level of governance and leadership accountability. And when leadership insulates itself from consequence, the institution degrades from the top down, while the workers absorb the public's frustration. The Board of Governors needs to be called before this committee and asked, on the record, what specific performance thresholds must be met before a bonus is appropriate. Because right now, based on what we saw today, there apparently are none. The Inspector General's remediation recommendations from the St. Louis audit need to be publicly tracked with deadlines and named responsible officials, not referenced as a government website link. And DeJoy should be required to return with written responses to every question he deflected today, including a full accounting of what happened to that mail. These are not radical demands. They are the minimum standard we would expect from anyone managing a public institution of this size. DeJoy laughed in that hearing room because he has learned, over years in that position, that the consequences of these appearances are measured in news cycles, not in outcomes. The only thing that changes that calculation is sustained, specific public pressure. The kind that makes it professionally and politically costly to sit in front of the United States Senate and tell a senator to go look at a website. It runs on accountability. And what we watch today is what happens in very concrete human terms when accountability stops being enforced. If you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribe, because this is exactly the kind of story that disappears after one news cycle, and it should not. And if this made you angry enough to do something, call your senator's office and ask what they are doing about Postal Service oversight, because the person who could not get their medication last week is counting on someone to ask that question.